Thank you for that beautiful song, Emily. Thank you, Osiel, for the music. And let's take that into our meditation as we prepare for today's lesson, for today's insights. Let's take a deep breath together, in through the nose and out through the mouth, as we quiet and settle the body, centered in this breath of our shared humanity. And we allow ourselves to feel that connection to that higher purpose, that spark of divinity that flows and expresses in each and every one of us here and throughout the world. We bring that into our center and we focus on it gently, knowing the truth of our being, feeling the connection to all that is, knowing that this is how we are free. This connection that flows through us is always present, is always available, is always nurturing us, guiding us, supporting us, and helping us see things in a new way. We allow that sense of connection well up in our hearts as gratitude and appreciation for this knowing. And we allow it to lift our hearts and lift our minds to a higher perspective, to claim the freedom that is truly ours. And we hold that in consciousness for all people, no exceptions. We see that freedom in us. We receive it as the gift given to us through divine inheritance, and we acknowledge it is also present in everyone we see. So grateful for these truths. So grateful for how they open us in consciousness and allow more of this divine energy to inform and create our world. And we hold this in silence for a few minutes. And so it is. Good morning, everyone. So happy to be here. So today's talk is around the idea of freedom. You know, we just celebrated 4th of July and all that that comes with. But we're going to take it a little deeper. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the spiritual side of this divine idea. So how free do you feel you are? How free do you want to be? How free do you think is even possible? And how do you speak this freedom into being? What do you claim as your truth? We are free to create our own experience through our thoughts. That's the good news as taught through New Thought. So let's examine this today. So I looked up the word freedom in the dictionary, and I got this definition: the human capacity to act or not act as we choose or prefer, without any external compulsion or restraint. So I like that. It's very empowering. So, of course, I looked a little deeper and I looked up the word through the metaphysical dictionary. And freedom, according to the metaphysics of freedom, is the quality or the state of being without thought of restraint, bondage, limitation, or repression, having a sense of complete well-being It is a result of regulating one's life according to principle, not according to what anyone else may think or say. So we're seeing it kind of a little more expanded. Charles Fillmore wrote in his book, Atom Smashing Power of Mind. Talk about a great title. I love that title. And when I first started in Unity, this stuff was like way over my head, way over my pay grade. But little by little, as my consciousness expanded, I was able to glean more truth from Charles Fillmore's book. And of course, other teachings. So I'm recommending a lot of different teachings. And I'm going to kind of bring in several, because depending on where you are, there is an avenue and a way for you to access this. So here's one from Charles. Every man is king in his own mental domain, and his subjects are his thoughts. So I had a recurring dream many years ago. And in this dream, I am standing in front of my mirror, and I'm looking at my image in the mirror. And then I notice that the image is very static. It looks like it's frozen on Zoom. You know what that looks like? And I am trying to animate it. And I am moving my mouth and making faces and trying to get that mirror image to change. And it doesn't change. So it's a very interesting image. And what was interesting about it was that I had it several times. So, really kind of got lodged in my thoughts. And I wondered about it a lot. And I started to really kind of, what could that mean? So if you think about it, what is a mirror? It's a reflection of the perceiver. So I saw my face, but I knew there was something more than just my physical reflection. There is a part of us that is in witness to the creations we see around us, also created by us, perhaps in our unconsciousness. And that state of awareness or awakening is a stage of spiritual development. First, we realize that we can see it. Not all I see may be mine personally, but if I see it and I claim it as mine collectively, as a conscious co-creation, I have claimed a position of power. Because if I own it as if I chose it, I can bless it for the lesson it provided, and I can choose again. This is how we have the power to change things in our outpicturing, or how we can recreate our world. And the claim, behold, I make all things new, we're really claiming all of these things as of God from that place as we align to the truth of who we are. And we get to live out our first principle, that there is only one power and one presence in all the universe. God, the good, omnipotent, all-powerful. So Jesus demonstrated this, and we call them miracles. But he also taught that we, too, inherited this gift, and this is the time for us to put it into practice. This is the time of our freedom to be more fully expressed in our divine nature. So principle number 3, unity, states that we are co-creators with God, creating reality through thoughts held in mind. So our thoughts have this kind of power. We're creating with them all the time. When we align these thoughts with God mind, then now we're creating as a vehicle, as an avenue, as a vessel through which all can come into being. So Charles Fillmore also wrote, we can never know the full meaning of freedom until we abide in the Christ consciousness. Without prayer and spiritual meditation, there can be no concept of spiritual freedom and therefore no demonstration of it. It is gained only through spiritual development, gained in long hours of communion with God in the silence. Of course, he spent a lot of time there, a lot of time. But we have to ask ourselves, are we spending any time there? Because that's where we're going to find it. Liberation from bondage, he continues, comes as we seek first that perfect alignment of mind of Christ, or mind of Christ consciousness, or God, alignment to the highest truth that we can hold, in our third dimensional personality experience. So prayer and meditation as a practice is how we work our fourth principle, and we begin an opening to a renewing of our mind, where we're creating now from that substance that is connected to all of Source. So stop and think for a second. What's the opposite of freedom? So there's a word, and this is kind of, I don't know, it has kind of an old connotation, but the word bondage. And I think the first time I really spent any time around bondage was when I read Emily Cady's book, Lessons in Truth. I don't know where you are in your path through Unity, how much you have delved into Unity teachings, but Lessons in Truth by Emily Cady is one of the foundational texts. And she wrote this text. There's some people say, well, it's very old-fashioned, and it's very, very biblical, a lot of Bible references. But because she's able to glean the truth out of these texts, and that's one of the things, for most of us, we come from that as our foundation in our culture, and that's a good kind of a way to enter into this new thought of the teachings. So I highly recommend Lessons in Truth. I remember when I first came to Unity and began studying the works of Unity, I read that book and I said, if I am ever in a deserted island and I can only have one book, that's the one I want. Because there's so much in that book and it helped me a lot. And of course, I've grown from there too. So here we go. She has the whole chapter on bondage. So so let's look at this idea of bondage. So bondage, according to the Metaphysical Dictionary, is undue attachments to thoughts in personal consciousness, which is really our 3D reality, what we think is our walking around reality, or what has already been outpictured on the screen of our experience. So it's undue attachment to what's already out there. It's our focused attention out there that is bondage. We allow it to take our energy and experience a bondage that is not real. And guess what? We were given dominion over this. We were given power over this. In Matthew 16:19, the scripture reads, "Whatsoever thou shalt bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. And whatsoever shall be loose on earth shall be loose in heaven." What that means is we're creating that reality through this bondage in our own thoughts of personal consciousness. So when we let it go, we uncreate it. So here's something that came to me. This is something y'all will be very familiar with, and that's hurricanes. So, a hurricane, we hear about the hurricane that, there's some disturbance out there somewhere in the Azores or somewhere out in the middle of nowhere ocean. There's a disturbance, something has shifted, something is changing. And then our attention is taken to it. And that attention, we start focusing, we start seeing that hurricane starts to spin around. I don't know what it's doing. It's just gathering energy and gathering energy. And it continues to gather energy. We continue to focus on it. We focus our energy on it, and it gathers energy, and it keeps growing and keeps growing and keeps growing, and it starts to move. And pretty soon it's a big thing that we're having to contend with. And so you think about that as a metaphor to how we utilize our power of focused attention, our attention. And that's the thing that we're binding on earth. You know, we're creating things in this way. So if we have the courage to persist in seeing only God in it all, and this is coming from Emily Cady quoting Psalms 76. If we have the courage to persist in seeing only God in it all, even the wrath of man shall be invariably turned to our advantage. And the story in the Bible that she refers to as well in this particular book, but certainly one that anybody who has any kind of Bible history, knowledge, Bible stories would remember. It's the story of Joseph. So this one is a Bible story in Genesis. And in the story of Joseph, he's speaking about the action of his brothers in selling him into bondage, into slavery. And it says, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. To them that love God, and by love it means align with the truth of their being, all things work together for good. And that's from Romans. Or to them who recognize only God in all things, the very circumstances in your life that seem heartbreaking evils will turn to joy before your very eyes, says Emily Cady. And she has a whole, like I said, that whole chapter on bondage. She's showing how this process kind of works. And it's bondage within our thinking. Now, the Fillmores taught more about the quality of the thoughts held in mind. So it's, not just any old thought. We want to choose our thoughts. So if you will steadfastly refuse to see anything but God in everything there, because that's what we say in our first principle, there's only one power. But if we start saying, but not that, but not that, we're excluding that. And so we're creating from that exclusion. So we're working all of these together. So here's a mantra. There's nothing but God here. Or one that I use a lot is the presence of God is in this. I claim it. I may not see it or recognize it quite yet, but I know that to be true. And I align to that higher truth. The presence of God is in this. There is nothing but God here. And I am only here for God. That's a song. So this is another little bit kind of from these same teachings. I'm pulling from all these teachings because something here is going to resonate with you. And whatever that is, I encourage you to follow it because it's trying to teach you this new understanding, the way you can receive it. So it says, when we were children, and again, they don't mean children as in age, but in knowledge, which has to do with development. We were held in bondage under the rudiments of the world. In other words, everything's happening to us. But when the fullness of the time came, in other words, when humanity was ready, God sent forth his Son. And because you are all sons, God sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts and into conscious minds. And so we aligned with that. We become part of that. We are that. And in John 8, it says, so if the Son makes you free, you will be free indeed. So here's the consciousness of Jesus the Christ, the way shower, what he brought forward in understanding and in realization for us to learn from. And Emily Cady quotes in the Bible, Galatians 4, so that thou art no longer a bond servant, but a son. And if a son, then an heir through God. It is through Christ, the indwelling Christ, that we are to receive all that God has and is, as much or as little as we could dare to claim. So how much of this we get, how much we receive, how much we use, how much we align to is completely up to us. So how empowered do you feel when you know you are the heir? Remember I told you the story about my grandma who used to say, Yo soy una hija del rey. I am the daughter of a king. I mean, she claimed it. And and we've inherited all. I mean, this is our inheritance as humanity, right? So how do we use this? How do we show up? How do we align to that truth of who and what we are, our divine nature? So another wonderful Unity New Thought teacher, author, Eric Butterworth, wrote, the greatest freedom is not freedom from things or conditions. It is the freedom to be, presence and being. The freedom to choose the kind of thoughts you think in the face of things or circumstances. And that is the greatest freedom. And that is our divine alignment in co-creation. So I want to do a little review around the four, what are called the four levels of consciousness. And again, this is to help you to help illustrate how this is development. And we're growing into this, all of us at our own level, in our own way. And Unity teaches these four levels of consciousness. And the first level of consciousness is victim consciousness. And victim consciousness, we can all identify with victim consciousness, where everything is happening to us. So that's definitely a consciousness of bondage. Everything is happening to us. Everybody's out to get us. Everything out there is, what's going on? Everything's against me. And then as we begin to develop our own sense of power and consciousness, we start to realize that we have power of choice and we get to choose. And this is that transition from victim consciousness to victor consciousness, where we start to be empowered to take ownership of our thoughts and our beliefs and our situation, our circumstances, and we begin to move forward in that sense of who we are. We claim our freedom and we begin that process of victor consciousness. Now we go back and forth with victor and victim because, in order to have a victor, you got to have a victim. And so, we got to be overcoming something. So we have that process happening all the time and we go up and down. And then eventually we come to we've been kind of fighting this internal battle and external battle, and we're creating, our own hero's journey, and we're battling whatever we're battling. And then we get to this place that says, okay, we kind of came to this place where what's it all about? I mean, why did I go through all of this? What is it? What is my purpose? And that's vessel consciousness. We begin to see ourselves as more than just pawns in our own little dramas. We see ourselves as in service, as able to be utilized for higher purpose, beyond just the victim and victor dynamic. And so that's a very interesting space in our spiritual development. We're able to align to possibility for what we bring in our energy, in our consciousness, in our perception, what we see and perceive and what we claim. And then as we continue on our process, we are able to move into a clarity, a discernment known as verity consciousness, where we start to see the truth of things from a higher perspective. We're able to hold that space in consciousness among all that's happening around us. So we're moving into a higher perspective, and we're seeing things the way God sees things, with the eyes of the Christ in us and as us and through us. So this is an important kind of just a little map, to kind of see what's happening. So now what I'd like to do too is I want to share with you a beautiful um, daily word page. And I've said this to you all before that I used to read the daily word, and then I really got to reading the daily word and really spending that time in the message and allowing it to speak to me on a much higher level. And if the daily word is where you step in, it has a lot to provide for you as well. So this particular daily word, I have a real hard time. Um, I don't throw them away. I just cannot do that. I gather them. I put them in these little booklets, like the little booklets for photo albums, and I focus on a theme and a thought, and I use it to develop myself, and it has served me so well. So here's this one. This one was for April the 3rd, 2022, and the word was free. And here's what it reads. As a spiritual being, I am always free. I remember this. At those moments, I feel at the mercy of an unpredictable world. While I may not be able to control what happens around me, I can take comfort knowing I don't need to. I am free to choose my response, but even more, I am free to meet life from my divinity, the breath of my spiritual power. In prayer, I claim divine ideas. I use my gift of imagination to envision the life I wish to live and the gift of will to make choices to bring it about. I speak affirmations to raise my consciousness and help create conditions for my highest and best outcomes to manifest. I find precious freedom realizing that life doesn't happen to me. Life happens through me. And in that very thing, you see those levels of consciousness expressed. I'm stepping out of victim. I'm stepping through and holding the truth of my ability to overcome. I'm serving in a place of vessel consciousness for that truth that is me and in me and through me to serve and come through. So I'm going to give you a little bit of homework. This homework, I'd like for you to take some time this evening, this week, and make a list of all those things that stand in the way of your idea of your own freedom. Make a list because you're going to see some things in that list. You're going to see what are some of the beliefs that you're holding. And you're going to allow yourself to be shown a new way. So I ask you to make that list and offer the list to the light of who you are. And however you do that is your practice of meditation and prayer. And ask to be shown. Ask for things to be released. Ask for what it is that your heart desires. Once you see what is in front of you and you own it and claim it as your own, in power, not as victim, but in power that you can see it now. And as you see it, whatever lesson it was here to teach you, you're ready. So now I would like for you to just kind of let me speak these words over you. And as you do, if I say this, I would like for you to claim this in your own consciousness if you like, you're invited. It's basically a claim. On this day, I claim that the limitations I have listed will be reknown and reclaimed in true freedom beyond any adherence to past acts, past teachings, past principles. I am word through this intention. I'm claiming myself as word. Word, I am word. I am word through the list I have created, that I may be liberated from all the false beliefs I have held about what binds me to my history, because I am truly free. I am word through this intention. Word, I am word. So I'm going to send this to the office so they can send it out in the email. This is your claim and your homework. So you're claiming the truth, and that is that you are free. And just like the song we sang earlier today, I am free, I am unlimited. There are no chains that bind me. Now we create from that space. And behold, we make all things new. Thank you.